We are live. We are live. We are live.
We are live.
We are live.
We're back.
Welcome back for another
We are
great
back.
episode of the On the Bump podcast. We did miss last week. I came down with a case of the COVID.
The old COVID.
Not great. Not
We're
great,
glad
but
you're doing okay.
yeah, we are back. We are back, as we always say. Yeah. So we did miss last week. We would have done AL Central, so we'll just do the AL Central today, obviously. So that's going to be the major topic because obviously in baseball right now there's not a ton going on with everything kind of transpiring, getting ready for opening day. There is, yes, Todd?
I did see something today on a Carlos Carrasco injury.
Oh yeah, they said he had a mild hamstring pull. Now people are saying it's a tear.
Okay.
So
Okay.
regardless, it doesn't seem to be off to a fresh start for Carrasco. So we'll see. I mean, he's an older pitcher. I mean, I wouldn't say he's older. I think he's 32, 33. I mean, it's older, but
34. Yeah,
yeah, for a pitcher, they can go. So we do have some depth. We had two guys fighting for the fifth spot to carry us a little bit. It's funny. I have noticed with the Mets and Yankees, who are both. Sorry.
I was going to say similar situation with the Yankees where they kind of have two or three guys all fighting for the back end spots in the rotation, and no one's really letting up. I think I saw something. I think it was a John Boy account tweeted it out because Jordan Montgomery had thrown, I think it was 5 innings of like shutout ball last a couple of days ago. He's like
yesterday.
It might have been no hit. I think in his career, his spring training career on St. Patrick's Day, he's technically thrown a St. Patrick's Day no hitter, where he's thrown 9 innings on St. Patrick's Day with no hits. So
that's funny.
Little tidbit there.
Yeah, I mean, so for the Mets, it's a lot simpler. It's Joey Lucchesi and David Peterson, two lefties that are fighting for that spot. It's a little simpler for them. For the Yankees, it's who? It's Montgomery, Davey, and Herman?
Herman, I guess. Yeah, everyone out of that group has been pretty lights out. Obviously, you got to factor in with the Herman situation, everything else that comes with that. When you're trying to win a championship, are those kind of distractions, not only just distractions for a baseball team, but from a moral standpoint? And we could spend an episode basically on that in terms of the guys in baseball who probably shouldn't be in baseball, who are still part of teams that have championship aspirations, and the Yankees are obviously one of those teams. I think some character, there needs to be some measure of character when trying to win a championship, because winning a championship isn't just about having good players on paper. It's about having the right group of people on paper. And I wasn't not around. I don't recall the Yankees teams as much of the late 90s, but thinking of the guys that were involved when Jim Leyritz, guys like that who have had their run-ins with the law and whatnot. But there were guys on that team, obviously the core four and several other veteran presences, Paul O'Neill, where they were table setters. I'm not sure where the Yankees are with those kind of guys right now. They're young from that standpoint. I'd like to see a Luke Voit or even Giancarlo develop into those guys. So we'll see here. It'll be interesting.
Is it weird? Maybe this is just an outside looking in, that I can't see Aaron Judge being like a team like leader at the top. Like I could see him being a voice of like good, obviously positive, but I can't see him being like that takes the locker room on and takes it over.
Right. He strikes me more of as a lead by example guy, where like the young guys coming up want to follow his routines, his regimens, and do what he does in terms of baseball mechanics. That's not to say, obviously, that Aaron Judge isn't a good guy, but
Yeah.
I don't, and obviously we're not there. I don't know if he's the guy you can come to in the clubhouse when you're having some issue that's bigger than baseball. I don't know.
I also think the whole Yankees and Mets and it coming down to this, battle for the fifth spot, which is never a bad thing when you have that good depth. Well, it's never a bad thing when the battle is positive, when all the pitchers are pitching well. If they're all pitching bad and you have to pick one, it's a different story. But it just goes to show how hard it is to build a winning roster in baseball compared to other sports. Obviously, with teams not trying free agency, it's became a little easier. But you still have to like if it's coming down to basically the fourth and fifth starters in a rotation are super important. In other sports, the end of your rotation or the end of your lineup really isn't as important as it is in baseball because that fourth and fifth starter is most likely going to get just about as many runs around that mound as your number one and two starter. So it's very important to finish your depth when it comes to baseball. That was one of the biggest things that the Mets had this offseason was on top of wanting to add some big time players like Lindor, like Carrasco, guys like that, and bringing Stroman back and stuff. They wanted depth and getting it all across the board so that because injuries are going to happen. Most likely, I don't think they've announced it yet, but I'm going to assume there's going to be some sort of expanded roster this year again. I have to assume they'll do something similar to what they did last year, taxi squad or something. So you have to be ready for it.
Yeah, I would like to see rosters expand a little bit, just knowing there's still obviously lingering effects when it comes to the COVID situation that teams experienced last year. Obviously, a lot of guys who didn't get or may have not gotten the reps necessary or that they usually would have gotten in minor league situations. They were kind of left. A lot of guys were left with no real organized baseball to play for a year of their careers, which affects obviously organizational depth. So it's going to become more of a teams are going to rely more on a more concentrated group of guys who are of that best of the best.
Well, there was a big argument at some point in the offseason, I remember it, where teams were kind of fighting, saying they didn't want to give I don't know who won, but they didn't want to give service time because they felt like the players who or not service time MLB, but service time for your contract. Because they felt like the players who were on the lower end who they needed developed, who really need those 3-4 years to develop, they didn't get to develop them. So why should the player benefit to an earlier free agency? The argument to that is X player had to literally sit out a whole year and not showcase anything for his future. So it's kind of a wash on both ends. But so last year it started with 30 players and then every like month or so it dropped down or something like that. Wasn't that what it was? It started with something and it finished up with 26. I know it finished up at 26.
I believe it was something like that. Yeah, they finished with 26.
Yeah, it's gradual. So listen, and it's going to be a longer season, obviously, this year than it was last year. So they were dealing with all this stuff for more of a sprint, while this year you have that long paced again, where you can kind of do what you've done in the past and go back to I don't want to say normal, but for the most part you can stretch yourself out. You can have your pitchers plan the right way. It's all back to what these managers are used to dealing with. But going on stuff that we're used to dealing with and the players are used to dealing with, the New York Mets and Yankees announced today they will be going up to 20% for their fans, up from what we believe was 10%. I had a feeling when we talked about it originally that it was going to go up even more than what it was that day. And I still think by the time we get to the middle of the first month, we could be up a little more. So definitely good news for the Mets. It's like 9,100. I don't know what it comes out to be for the Yankees.
Yep, I think it's 10,500 for the Yankees. I have been, and Nick has been ribbing me a little bit about this because I have a tradition where I go to the first game and the last game of the year. Obviously, the last time, or the first home game and the last home game of the year. And obviously, the last time that happened was 2019. I was at opening day, and then I was at game 5 of the ALCS where Paxton pitched, and tickets were obviously super discounted because Yankees were down 3-1 in that series. So it was a closeout game where we had no chance of closing it out ourselves. It was a closeout game for the Astros.
Oh, but Yankees won though, right?
Yankees won that game, but then
yeah, because then it went to
6, right? Yeah.
No, that actually, and I know I'm a jerk, so I could have just been doing that so you can repeat the fact they lost. But it really was more the fact that I was confused. I thought you said they lost.
Yes,
and I
they
was
lost.
I remember the home run being at the home run that was, he hit the home run off Chapman, ran around third, didn't want to get his, no one take my shirt off, that whole thing. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
correct.
I think that was what happened.
But back to the opening day, first home game, last home game thing. I was looking at tickets for the first Yankees home game and on StubHub. And hey, if StubHub wants to do one of those things with us where, we say use code on the bump DSN for 10% off tickets, I would be game for that. If anyone knows anyone at StubHub who would like to
fun fact,
do that with us?
In the beginning of the summer when I was putting podcasts out, I was looking for advertisers. And I was reaching out to people, and I got some responses. Wasn't StubHub, but SeatGeek was one of them. And
okay, we like SeatGeek.
They had said at the time that they weren't doing anything sponsorship-wise because they just weren't making any money because there was no events going on. But I can imagine if we circle back.
Maybe we should circle back with SeatGeek. I'm a big SeatGeek guy.
By the way, the lowest price for the Yankees.
I was looking on.
Lowest price for Yankees home opener is
$695.
Oh, I have 364 here.
That's on SeatGeek?
No, StubHub.
Oh, earlier today when I looked, it was $695. Yeah. So maybe they opened up more seats.
Oh yeah, that would make sense.
The 20%.
That would make sense.
So the next round of season ticket holders might have gotten access. So
yeah, it makes sense. The Mets start on the road. But their first home opener is April 8th against the Marlins, and those seats right now are $138. And then after that, the tickets just drop off. You have $138, then you have $21, but then it goes randomly the Sunday of that week. It goes up to $158 out of nowhere.
Sundays are always more expensive. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but those
Sunday
still
day games with the family.
Yeah. So it's going to be interesting to see.
The best deals on seats. You go.
I go. Okay. No, it's going to be interesting to see as the season goes on, if the prices start raising back, when people get more comfortable. The only thing is, as you know, you're going to need a vaccine or a negative test to get into the stadium the week of. I know for the Nets in basketball, with the purchase of a ticket, you got a test at the arena. They did a COVID test, the rapid test there with the purchase of your ticket. It was included, which I thought was a great idea because you're basically having people, they need a negative test to get in or a vaccine, but a negative test, and it's got to be the week of. But if the game's on a Saturday, you can get the test on a Monday, and you could have easily contracted it within those 5 days. So I guess it's like it's obviously they're trying to do whatever they can to make it seem reasonable, but at the end of the day, it's going to be hard to completely leave it out of the stadium.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how things play out in the next few months. Typically, baseball, I think it's April, May. That's when you get the cheapest deals outside of course, the home opener. The one day I kind of have circled on my calendar, I'm early going, that I wouldn't mind being at is May 4th against the Astros. Usually I go to opening day, and then I'm usually not at a game until like June.
I
go
always
to
make
opening
the
day,
mistake.
and then April and May.
I always make the mistake of every year I say I'm not going to go to a game till June because it's too cold. And every year, especially at Citi Field,
That's
I know Yankee
Bob's.
Stadium's.
That's Bob's thing.
Yeah, and I used to be no, I like to go early in the season at least once, and I always say I won't, and then I do it anyway, and then I freeze my ass off because I know Yankee Stadium's cold, but Citi Field being next to the water is a different level of cold. It doesn't matter if it's a Saturday afternoon game. That cold wind comes through the back end of that stadium in center field, and it is a nightmare. Like I think I went on a cycle up until last year, obviously, where I went to like 4 or 5 straight April games, and it was like every time I'd regret it. I think one of them was the game I went with you and Bob, and it was the Mets Cardinals, the extra inning game.
Oh yeah,
was that with you? You were there
every day. Yeah.
Yeah. And it went to like 13 innings. And it was freezing. Yeah. I don't think it was April. It may have been May, but still early enough that it wasn't June. So
I think it was May.
It probably was because Bob wouldn't go in April, so it had to be May.
No.
Yeah. While we're here, before we forget, before we get into the preview, fantasy baseball, Daily Sports Network Fantasy Baseball. I made a point to talk about it today to make sure we got this part out there. We have a fantasy baseball league. It is the first year of a dynasty keeper league where we haven't figured out the full parameters. Once we get everybody in, we'll kind of vote on the parameters of what's being kept year to year. Most likely it'll be 3 pitchers, 3 hitters, or something along those lines. And yeah, so it's going to be $50. We have the link. We've sent the link on our socials. So definitely reach out. And once everyone joins. Oh no, we didn't send the link.
We posted the link.
The link, yeah, we wouldn't have sent the link. So we sent a post about it, so you can message us or whatever you want to do. And then once everyone signs up, I'll send out some sort of, I think it's called League Safe, for the league fee, where basically you send it to this thing. It's like I've used it for all my fantasy leagues. The money goes there, and it holds it to the end of the season and gives it to the winner. So I'll probably set that up at some point once everybody kind of gets in. And if for some reason we have 8 people who are interested at the end of the day and we have to fill it, those 8 people, we will still do money. We'll still do money via the amount of people we have that want to do it. So we'll figure it all out. It'll all be figured out. But that's going to be, the draft will be on March 29th. 29th to Monday at 8 o'clock. So best day for all of us. So we will get on that. So like I said, reach out to us if you want to join, tell your friends, whatever you want to do. Reach out to us on Twitter, although that sometimes doesn't work. Yeah, so reach out to us. And yeah, so that's the fantasy
Instagram,
baseball.
Twitter, all that. In the YouTube comments, whatever you got.
Yeah. The email too is dailysportsnetworktips@gmail or on the bump. I think our email is just on the bump at Gmail. Yeah, I think it's on the bump at Gmail.
On the bump dsn@gmail.com.
That's what it is. You could do that, or you can do Daily Sports Network Tips. That's what it is. On the bump DSN, yeah. So, yeah, reach out to us and let us know. All right, it's time for the preview. It's AL Central time. We've now gone through the whole National League. The AL West was the last episode. Now we are on to the AL Central. For those who are unfamiliar with how we run this, basically give you our prediction on the standings of the division, over-unders on the win totals. We give you a predicted win total. Then we will give you our MVP and Cy Young of the division. This division probably will be cut and dry, if I had to guess, but I mean, maybe not. Maybe I'm wrong. So I think we start with the Tigers, right?
Yeah, that one's pretty cut and dry.
So Tigers come in with an over/under of 68.5. Their lineup, obviously, as you don't need me to tell you that it's pretty rough. I feel like the Tigers are still a team that, as bad as they are, they kind of try.
They
By
are
still
at
paying.
the beginning. Yeah, they're at the beginning of a rebuild.
Yeah, but I mean, they're doing. I think some of their back end talent that they've acquired, prospect wise, not real life, obviously, not like real players. But you talk about Mize, Casey Mize,
Yeah,
Spencer Torkelson, Riley Green. I mean, Matt Manning. They do have. Yeah, they have guys that are going to step up and be legit good, especially Mize. I think Mize is an awesome pitcher. He reminds me a lot of someone we'll talk about in a little bit on the White Sox, Lucas Giolito. I said that right, who is amazing, obviously. But they have some decent players in Detroit. They have Miggy. They're still paying Miggy, which you have to give them credit for. They could have easily tried to get out of that by now. Yeah,
I don't really understand why that's still happening.
Miggy?
Not even I just don't understand why Miggy would still want to be there.
Well, I don't think it would be easy to pay to get rid of his contract. He still has, if I had to guess right now, I think he still has 2 or 3 years left at 30 million plus. He signed a huge deal. Cabrera contract. Let me see. It was 8 years when he signed it. 2024, yeah. So he still has. No, he 2025. So he has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So he has 5 years, $150 million left on that deal.
Lordy.
That's nuts. That's why he's still on the Tigers.
I mean, he won a championship. What was that? His first year in the league in 2003 with the Marlins. Crazy to think that someone from that team is still in baseball. He has to be one of the only players left in baseball
on that team
who has played just from the 2003 season. We've talked about it a million times, but like for me, the baseball, like the 2003 season is like my peak. 2003 to like 2007.
Who would have been the closest player outside of him that I can even think of? Was David Ross on that team, or was that Cody Ross? No, Cody Ross was later.
On the Marlins?
Yeah. I'm talking about that 2003 team. I mean, he definitely had the wrong Cody Ross, but I don't think.
Luis Castillo. Now I want to look up the 2003 Marlins roster.
That's what I have it right here. So, yeah, I mean, Juan Pierre.
And these guys are all long gone in terms of retirement.
Long gone. I'm trying to find. Really, what I'm looking at is the guy who else would be the closest to still playing, and it doesn't look like anyone. I mean, the closest might actually be Juan Pierre, which sounds crazy, but I mean,
just for reference,
AJ Burnett. Yeah, AJ Burnett's probably.
There were guys. There was a guy on that team born in 1964. So that man would be 56 years old, and his teammate Miggy is still in the league. Miggy was born in 1983. Wait, where is he on here? Is he on 30. Here?
Yeah, he's on there. I saw him just now.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I was like, wait a second.
So yeah, that's
Dontrelle Willis. Dontrelle is still only. He could still be in the league technically. Obviously,
yeah.
He's 39.
His playing career was
shorter. Fun fact about Dontrelle, I believe he retweeted something I tweeted once, or like responded to it.
I feel like he did too. I feel like I remember
seeing it. It was a big highlight for me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Big highlight of my baseball life there.
But yeah.
But back to the Tigers here, I guess.
Yeah. It would be easier to deal
really
Cabrera if it was like a 2-year deal worth like 60 even. Like if it was the 30 a year with 2 years left, you could play him this year and then technically use him for a year or buy him out at the year. But 5 years is
right. A team on the cusp of a championship. He wouldn't. Let's be real. He wouldn't even make it on on a starting lineup on a championship team, he would be a bat that you go to situationally when you're trying to, if you're down in a game and you're trying to tie it, go ahead, or something like that with one swing. Otherwise, on this roster, Candelario had some good runs. All of my frame of reference with a lot of these players, fantasy-wise, I had at different points last season. Did I have Robbie Grossman on my lineup at some point? I'm not sure. Victor Reyes had some stretches last year. He's still young. Scope isn't so young, but he's a durable, high quality.
Did Scope come back to them?
Situational infielder who can get the job done.
He signed back with them?
Scope is on the roster.
Oh, cool. That's actually he's not a bad player.
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah. I didn't know.
And then,
he did.
And then some trade pieces you see, Matthew Boyd has been linked to every trade deadline. He's linked to somebody. There were rumors basically for each trade deadline that the Yankees wanted Matthew Boyd, and the Tigers were like, okay, give us Gleyber Torres. And they were like, no, obviously. So
one of the interesting names is Michael Fulmer, because his story is he was traded, obviously, to the Tigers for Yoenis Cespedes. That was the deal. And at that deadline, the Mets had told the Tigers they preferred to give up Zach Wheeler at the time. And the Tigers insisted upon Fulmer, and you can't really blame them. Fulmer was a rock-solid prospect, and he has had Tommy John, I think, once or twice, and it's not been the same. But imagine they could have had Wheeler. I mean, most likely they wouldn't have Wheeler anymore. They would have probably redealt him anyway. But, it's interesting to see Fulmer, who I loved Fulmer as a prospect for the Mets, and I just wanted to see him get it together. But it doesn't look like that is going to be a thing, at least in Detroit. I'm gonna go ahead, start it off here, and say I'm gonna say under. But I think if you told me they're going to win 70, over under 68.5, if you told me they can win 70, I would say, okay, you may have a point. Like, I just don't want to be on the wrong side of it, so I'd rather take that under and simply say 67 and 95. I'll just go slightly under, but wouldn't surprise me if they went over.
Yeah, I'll take under. I'll go slightly under 68 and 94. This team isn't as barren as, say, the Pirates or
Orioles.
The Pirates roster is atrocious. Orioles is, I would say, slightly lower than this. In terms of the teams that are like absolutely bottoming out right now, worst is Pirates. Then I think you go Orioles. Then you go Tigers. Then I think, even though I think the Rangers might win more games this year, they're below. Well, actually, we got to put the Rockies next. Then we go. Rockies are probably at the top of the rebuilding teams. And then we go Rangers, Mariners. So if we're doing like a bottom feeder power ranking there, Mariners are at the top. Mariners, Rockies are at the top of the bottom feeders.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's fair to say. I don't think missing much there. I think the Tigers, like I said, I just don't want to be on the wrong side of them. I think they could potentially. If you told me like they win 71 games, I'd say okay. But
don't forget the AJ Hinch, whatever.
Yeah,
all that comes with AJ Hinch.
What, winning World Series, or the cheating part?
The cheating part.
Oh, so, the cheating part. Yeah.
Hey. It'll be interesting to see how. I think obviously this is a good spot for him if he's going to become a manager again, just because he's not going to be this isn't a big spotlight position at this point, and he can kind of build this team in in that mold. And this team, when you think of where the Astros got to at the top, despite all the cheating, considering where they were 3-4 years before that, they were one of the worst teams, worst rosters of all time.
Yep.
It was bad. They had nothing. Kind of stacked a couple number one picks, kind of like what the Tigers have done here with guys like Casey Mize and these top picks and Turnbull and Torkelson, guys like that. Yeah, not Turnbull. Torkelson. But just guys like that who are cornerstones of your franchise and kind of taking almost like the New Jersey Devils are doing a little bit.
Kind of turning the roster over a little bit. Next team here is one of my most fun teams to me. And I'm gonna root for them just because of the fact that in a year where they're amongst the teams who don't have to go for it when you consider who's not going for it.
Here.
Oh.
I know who your fourth team is. I'll tell you who mine is.
I think I can guess.
Is the Cleveland Indians.
Listen, I don't think that's super crazy.
I think the end is near for this team. They're bottoming out, or not bottoming out. There are a lot of just moves here that kind of signify a team being on the edge a little bit, where it's going to come to a point here because they've been in the mix. When you think of this core of the Indians, they've been in the mix since 2015 and nothing's happened. Right? Well, 2015? Yeah.
Yeah.
And nothing's happened here. They keep hitting a wall. And they've added pieces here when you look at like Cesar Hernandez and the likes of Eddie Rosario. They're guys who they're okay. And then the whole Austin Hedges situation last year.
And now the Lindor situation.
They're okay guys, but right. And obviously the Lindor situation. There are guys here that are, I don't know who the long-term stars are here. Besides Jose Ramirez, could have been, obviously he's a good player, but in terms of MVP caliber, I think in a 162-game grind, that doesn't happen. And kind of, I think the same goes for Shane Bieber. You saw we tore him up in the playoffs. I don't think that was necessarily a fluke. I don't know if I believe fully in him. And the managerial situation here is a little ticky-tacky with everything surrounding Terry Francona and his health. So losing out on a guy potentially like Terry Francona leading your team, I think a lot of this is going to be very fluid. And if the Indians are in a situation where they're not first or second in the division towards the trade deadline, I think it's going to be a sell-off.
Yeah, I will say that I'll stick with what I was going with, but I don't think it's crazy. Like I was actually contemplating where I was going to go with that. We'll go on the Indians here for now. I'll still say, I know that sounds like you're saying they're going to finish fourth. I'll still say third, but we'll get into them a little more. Yeah, I think Ramirez is good. I think Bieber's good. I think they both could be trade candidates at the right time. I think when you trade a superstar guy in Francisco Lindor, it doesn't just give you a couple of years and then it goes down. Unless you're built very strong.
They have one of the lowest payrolls in the league, I believe.
Well, I heard today I just read, or a couple days ago, they're talking about an extension for Ramirez. So maybe they try to keep the core they have now and build around that. I don't know. Because if you have a core of Jose Ramirez, Shane Bieber, and some of the young guys they've now brought in, I mean, you have Bieber,
Tristan
McKenzie, you have Josh Naylor, who was a budding star last year. Andres Jimenez from the Mets. I don't like Rosario from the Mets, but Andres Jimenez is a good pickup. Bowers. I mean, they have some guys that can swing it a little bit. But you'd obviously have to add to that. But if you want to maybe make another run at it, you can still do that with Ramirez and Bieber. But I don't think trading a guy like Lindor helps you. I think it sets you back years. So, yeah. I mean, their number's 78.5. I'll give them
It's that low, 70.5.
78, 78.5. 78.5.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that's still kind of low.
I'm going to say over. I'll say they win 80. I think they go 80 and 82. I think just because they're going to be potentially a disaster, I don't think they drop down to like a 70-win team. I still think they have some pop to them. So I'll say 80 and 82 over, and they're finishing third in the division for me.
I mean, their OPS plus last year with the team they had was 86. I just don't see where this team goes in a positive direction. I think their pitching was a flash in the pan last year, and offensively, they don't have much. Their pitching had to so far outweigh their hitting just to keep them in a position. Yes, they have Jose Ramirez and guys, and Lindors and guys like that is what they had. But when you look at the teams that hit better than the Indians, the only teams that had a lower OPS plus than the Indians were the Rockies, the Rangers, and the Pirates. Their hitting cumulatively was bad, which speaks to their depth. I will say I'm going to go under just because I think they're going to try and restock their batting core by potentially trading Bieber. I don't think this roster makes it through the season as constructed. I will say they win 76 games.
So 76 and 86?
Yep. I think the end is near for this roster.
Yeah, I don't begrudge anybody for thinking that they can drop off that dramatically. I think they'll drop off, but maybe not that dramatically. But on to the next team that I started talking about before was the Kansas City Royals, and they get a lot of high hopes for me because of what they did in the offseason. A team that didn't necessarily need to spend when you look around the scheme of Major League Baseball. But they did. So they go and they get Carlos Santana. They go bring a Michael A. Taylor, which is a much smaller deal. They go get Andrew Benintendi. They obviously have a good system in place in Kansas City where they know what they're doing. They know how to grow people. They know how to put people in the right situation. You still have Jorge Soler and Whit Merrifield, Hunter Dozier, Adalberto Mondesi, Sal Perez. That's a nice lineup. That's a nice lineup. And they have that ability.
Ryan McBroom can hit too. He was in the Yankees system for a while.
They have a prospect in Bobby Witt who's going to be a star. If you've seen some of those highlights, he's hitting gong show home runs, and he's insanely fast. He reminds me a lot of like a Trey Turner with more power, a lot more power, but a Trey Turner ilk of a guy. If you look at this lineup, when you talk about this lineup and like what they're kind of built like, they have that feeling of the lineup they were a year before they started competing, and they started getting to that point where you didn't know anybody, but they had some guys that they just played hard. They played baseball the right way. You talk about Andrew Benintendi, Whit Merrifield. These are guys, Hunter Dozier. These are guys that just seem like they're gonna bite down and they're gonna win games. I don't know.
You're gonna laugh at this. My comp, I feel like this roster is very much like the New York Knicks roster, where it's like they have a solid base, but they're just missing that key guy who solidifies the middle of the lineup, their 30, 40 home run guy, which Hunter Dozier has that power, I feel like.
I mean, Jorge Soler.
And even Soler, even Salvador Perez, we act like he's 45 years old. He's still only 30. He'll be 31 in May. So he still has some years ahead of him. And Brady Singer was a key contributor. Brad Keller, Danny Duffy. They have a solid pitching base. Greg Holland is a solid reliever. They added Mike Minor. This team. This isn't a championship team. This isn't even likely. It could be a playoff team if they added a couple pieces here and there. But they're just a really solid team. Like if you see them on your calendar, you're not like, okay, this is going to be a super easy 3-game series. You're gonna have to pay attention a little bit if you're one of these championship level teams, because this team will sneak up on you.
Did you know that 2 years ago Jorge Soler went 48 and 115? He led the AL in home runs 2 years ago. And 100
as a member of the Royals?
Royals, yeah. Because I remember there was talks about trading him that year. Let me make sure I had that stat right. I mean, I did look it up. I trust my eyes. But yeah, it was 2019, 48, 117. Did have a ton of strikeouts, but he did lead the home runs. I mean, he had a monster year. So yeah, this Kansas City team is definitely a fun team to watch out for. I will be rooting for them as my American League team, something like that.
They're my secondary team.
Yeah, I'll give them some rooting because you know what? Regardless of what they're doing, they're trying. So give them that credit. Their number is 72.5. I'll say over. And I'll say 7. Yeah, I do too. And I hate that but I have to stick to my guns. So I'll say 75 wins. I'll say 75 and 87, although I'd like to go higher, but I kind of got to stick to where I went with this. Okay.
81 and 81.
See, I don't think they're there yet. And I don't think you're necessarily wrong. I just don't. I think they're one more year.
81 and 81.
I think they're one more year away from a 500 year. I think they're in that bridge year where they start to show signs, and they're one more away from that. So, yeah, I'll take. We were both over. I'll have them finishing 4th. You have them finishing 3rd. I just don't think that switch over happens just yet. I think they're 1 year out of that. Good enough. Number 2 in this division, I think we're in lockstep. The Minnesota Twins. Okay, Minnesota Twins. Yeah, I think they have the ability. Now, don't count them out of winning this division. They have the ability. They're very good in the regular season. They hit a shit ton of home runs. They have a good farm system coming up behind with Royce Lewis and Alex Krilikov, I think his name is. They have some good guys behind them. They could pitch the ball a little bit with Maeda and Jose Barrios, and they have a squad. They can play.
J.A. Happ.
Yeah, J.A. Happ, of course, the star. But
Pineda. Randy Dobnik.
All right. Well, that's not really helping their case when you say names like that. But yeah, I think they do finish second.
Those are good back end rotation guys, I feel like, who have potential. Dobnik started a playoff game for them a couple of years ago. Obviously, that didn't go too well. Dobnik was also leading the league in the ERA, wasn't he, that year? Something crazy. Like he was like lights out that year. I think that was 2019.
Yeah, it had to have been because he last year was on and off. Yeah, he had a 4 ERA last year, and his career ERA is 3.2. So he had to have a monster 2018 or 2019. Sorry. The one player I really love on that team,
and this team has.
You go.
Go.
No,
you
go. No, I won't speak.
This team has guys. I'm not saying that they can, but they're play up to their absolute top potential, there are 2, 3, maybe even 4 guys here who, if you told me one of them was in the MVP conversation at the end of the year, I wouldn't be like, whoa, that's crazy. And I think that list would be Max Kepler, obviously Donaldson, Sano, and then maybe even Mitch Garver.
Yeah.
And this team has bats throughout. When you look at just the depth of that lineup, it's one of the deepest lineups in baseball.
Yeah, they have a guy who directly reminds me of McNeil on the Mets. It's Luis Arias, who just gets the bat on the ball. I think he's their leadoff guy, plays second. He's just a really honestly reminds me of Luis Castillo back in the day, where he would just get on base. I like Arias a lot, and then I also I've always liked Byron Buxton. One day he'll turn it on because he has way too much talent not to. Well, I mean, he can. He can not turn it on. There's been many cases in Major League Baseball of guys who don't get it. But I don't know. He's fun to watch. Good center fielder, good speed top of the lineup. I think this team is very good. Their over is 88.5. So it's a tight number. I think they go over. I think it's very slight. I'll say 90 wins. Yeah, I'll say 90 wins on that button. Brings them to 90-72. And a second place finish for me. Yeah, slightly over.
Some of their bats had below average seasons last year. Their OPS was about league average at 103, or OPS plus. They gave up the fewest home runs as pitchers in baseball. Also, I believe they had the 4th highest ERA plus, which obviously is a good sign. And they added to that pitching staff already.
But
I mean, Mitch Garver had an OPS plus last year and was hurt quite a bit of 42.
Mitch Garver had
82.
The thing is, though, what stunts
they got rid of guys. A lot of the guys that played quite a bit are gone. Who had low averages there, so I think it's going to pick up.
I'm not talking about the postseason, obviously, because they're a different team when they get there. But when you think of the way they hit the ball, the power they show, they're a regular season team that's ready to play. So, like I said, 90 wins for me.
I'll go. I really feel like it's going to be neck and neck with them and the White Sox. I think this team is a little more veteran than the White Sox. I think the White Sox have more talent, but I think this team will be there. I'm going to say 93.
93-69.
Part of me almost wants to pick them to win the division, but I'll relax.
So, with that comment, we do jump to the White Sox. Oh, no, never mind.
We know where I'm going with the White Sox.
Yeah. I think the White Sox we know where you're going. I think the White Sox, we'll talk about their talent on the field for now. I think they're getting a touch too much love too soon. A touch. Now, not to say
the Padres, and we kind of put them in that category.
And you know what I said last week, I thought the Padres are getting too much love too. I think they're going to be good, but I think both teams are kind of on that pedestal too soon. I do like what the White Sox have built. I like Jimenez. I like Lucas Giolito. I like Moncada. I like Hendricks, who they brought in, who I think
even had a run.
Excuse me?
Dylan Cease even had a run.
Yep. Dallas Keuchel. They bring Lance Lynn. Michael Kopech is a guy who eventually could get it going. You obviously bring in Liam Hendricks. You have a couple lefties in that pen that can surround him. Jose Abreu. Yeah, I mean this team's got the players, so they will be very much in it, if not how I expect them to win it. Now I know you'll go on to rant about Tony La Russa, and I get it. I do understand it. I think he can. I think if he puts the old school ways aside, which I think if you're getting a job in 2021, you're putting those old school styles aside. I do think that. I think he's a better coach than what
You're
they have.
forgetting who the owner of the White Sox is.
Reinsdorf? Is it Reinsdorf?
Jerry Reinsdorf is a dinosaur. I don't mean just age. I mean he is just like set, one of these guys who's just set in his ways. We obviously know the whole deal. If you watch The Last Dance, you kind of really got a view into how Reinsdorf operates. Basically chose Jerry Krause over a continuation of the Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen years, when he probably could have squeezed 2 more seasons out of that, if not more. They're coming off of a three-peat. He says, forget it, let's rebuild, and gives the keys to Jerry Krause, which obviously that didn't work very well. But he was loyal. He was loyal to the executive over the players themselves. It could be a little bit of that going on here again, where it backfires on him, and it could backfire hard in this case because of what has come out about Tony La Russa. We've talked about this in previous episodes. I just don't see how he's a guy that can relate to this team. I'm not being an ageist here, but there's a certain point you get to where it's like, especially with how fast moving changes are in baseball, and some of the situations that are going to have to be balanced throughout this year, whether it's COVID related or it's just the climate that we live in currently. I don't know if having Tony La Russa as your face is going to do you a lot of favors. I would have liked to have seen a younger, more players-oriented manager.
I mean,
get in here.
Realistically, if you're someone who doesn't like La Russa, which is fine, you're entitled to that. They should have just kept the AL Manager of the Year in Rick Renteria. I know they wanted to go a different direction. I understand that, but
I'm a big fan of if it's not broken, you don't fix it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't broken.
Yes, but on the same point in my brain, I can also say around where sometimes you just know there's a manager that isn't meant to take you to that next level. You need somebody different to change the voice to really take that team to a different level. So I don't begrudge them, but if you are someone that doesn't like La Russa, then
I don't know.
No, you don't like La Russa. Don't say you don't know. You don't like him.
I guess I
You
don't like La Russa.
You don't like his 15 cats.
This team is top 10 both from a batting standpoint and a pitching standpoint. They've proven that.
Well, I think
statistically it plays out as well, and they've only added to that.
I think they have the 4th best odds at the World Series right now, or 5th.
I don't like that.
It may be 5th. I think it's Dodgers, Padres, Yankees. I forget the order. Dodgers, Padres, Yankees.
Padres have better.
Yeah. Oh, I know. I don't know the order. I don't know. Okay, so it's this. It's Dodgers.
Padres have better odds than the Yankees to win the World Series?
No. It's Dodgers plus 350, Yankees plus 550, Padres plus 800, White Sox plus 850, Braves plus 1,000, Mets plus 1,000. If I was a betting man,
I'm taking the Braves.
I would say the Braves and the Mets at plus 1,000 are both the best numbers of that bunch. that plus 1,000. It feels like the Mets and Braves both should be at least at that plus 850 where the White Sox are, if not better, especially the Braves.
I would hammer the Braves. Hammer the Braves. Put the stimmy on the Braves, people. Stimmy it up on the Braves. But back to the White Sox. Yeah. Obviously, adding a veteran closer at the back end, arguably the best closer in baseball. I don't know. It's up there. Yeah. Sure. I mean, and then obviously you have guys like Tim Anderson, who has powered my fantasy lineup, and the outfield is obviously massive. You have Jose Abreu. This is a team meant to hit the crap out of the ball and power pitching. It's never going to be an easy team to play. I just don't know if they're there to the point of a World Series contender. But the AL is pretty weak this year.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Compared to the NL. So, like, they're the second best team in the American League, I guess.
I think, yeah. I mean, I think that'll majorly vary on what you get out of a team like the Astros. But, yeah.
And the Twins.
And the Twins, of course. Yeah, of course the Twins do. I'll start it off. Over 91.5. I'll say over. I'll say 93 and 69.
Yeah, I'm gonna go 94 and 69, or 68, just because I had the Twins at 93 and 69. I actually want to see what the schedule is for October, because I would circle on your calendars. Let's see. If you're a baseball, just a general baseball fan, the Twins play the Royals the last weekend of the season. Oh, wow. What? Wow. Okay. So the Twins do not play the White Sox at all in September or October.
Interesting.
The last series against the White Sox, wow, is August 9th to 11th.
That seems like impossible.
That's the schedule.
Pretty crazy. I feel like you always play divisional teams in that last month.
Yeah, usually that last month.
That's pretty crazy.
And they have the last month, they have Rays, Indians, Royals, Indians again, Blue Jays, Cubs, Blue Jays, Tigers, Royals. That's a pretty easy stretch, I would say, for the Twins. Not easy, because you have the Rays and you have the Blue Jays in there quite a bit. You have 6 games against the Blue Jays, 3 against the Rays, but otherwise pretty winnable. So it'll be interesting. I think this division is probably going to be one of the more closely contested. And the Royals have a chance to play spoiler the last weekend of the season for the Twins.
Or play for competition at that point. You know what I mean?
Or what?
Or like be in a spot where they could be within spitting distance of a wild card. You know? Who knows? To finish up the preview, MVP, Cy Young. We'll start with the MVP. Todd, who would you think your MVP would be?
I guess it has to be from the White Sox. I guess that's what would make sense. But also, if the Royals are playing really well, no, I'm not going to overthink it. Let's go. I'm going to say Tim Anderson. I think he's obviously. This is going to sound a little. Actually, no. he's one of the shortstops. He's a rare shortstop in the fact that shortstops don't hit particularly well overall. He is a complete package hitting wise, where he can hit for power, he can hit for average. Batting wise overall, you got to figure he's top 10 player in baseball. And if the White Sox are going to win a division, obviously you know what you're getting with like Jose Abreu. He's going to hit 35, 40 homers. But the completeness of Tim Anderson's hitting abilities is what's going to put them over the edge. If Tim Anderson has a bad year, it'll be bad news for the White Sox. Whereas they have enough sluggers in the middle of that lineup where if one guy's cold this year, another guy can get hot, but they don't have necessarily that guy who gets on base consistently. If they don't have that, he's the DJ LeMahieu of this team.
Fair enough.
So he's the MVP.
I had ideas of Tim Anderson, which is probably the right move, but I'm going to go Josh Donaldson. Kind of for all the things you said about the White Sox, the Twins, if they're going to be in contention, somebody's going to need to be an elite talent on offense for the Twins. I understand as a team they do hit the ball very well, but I think Josh Donaldson primed for one more big year in his career, and I think this could be it. I was also hard-pressed not to say Miguel Sano. I think he's due for a breakout as well. But I'll say Josh Donaldson. I think this is a year for him to shine while those two teams fight for the division. My Cy Young for me is easy. Actually, no, yeah. I'm going to go Lucas Giolito. I think he is the best pitcher in the division. And I think he's primed to just simply get better. So give me Lucas Giolito. However you pronounce his last name, I'll take that running away.
Cy Young. I want to say I'm going to go Maeda. I think the Twins are going to need big pitching, especially at the top of that rotation, to go along with if they're going to become this more complete team.
I almost went
need that. So
he was really good last year.
Maeda was a top contender last year for the Cy Young. Obviously, though, it was a 60-game season, so anything stat-wise, I kind of almost I don't throw it out, but it's too small of a window for me.
Yeah.
But the style in which he pitches is sustainable long term, and I think when you take that into consideration and what the Twins are going to need when you're starting out series against some of these tougher interdivisional opponents, you're going to need him at the top.
I think I almost went Maeda, so it's right there. It's right there. That is the AL Central preview. Was a blast. We have one more left, and then we have like an MLB preview per se. Do you have history today?
Been looking a little bit. The only real crazy thing, or not crazy, it's hardly crazy. There's a couple things here. 2002, tomorrow will be the 19th anniversary of the Yankees Entertainment and Sports Network, the Yes Network, which obviously has been a light in all Yankees fans' lives. My TV is just tuned to the Yes Network basically from April to October. Maybe I'll mix in a little MSG this year if the Knicks are in contention. But obviously the Yes Network is the home of the New York Yankees. Yankeeography has been a light in my life as well. Just the content they come out with. Center Stage is great. They're just a content machine. I love the team with Bob Lorenz, Jack Curry, David Cohn, John Flaherty, Meredith Marakovitz. What a crew. Shout out to you guys. Congratulations to the Yes Network, 19 years. Wow.
Funny story about Jack Curry. His nephew went to school with me and Robbie. He graduated with me and Robbie.
Oh, wow.
Shout out that, yeah. So I guess his brother lives in Mawa, yeah. Jack Curry's nephew was in 8th grade. First name was Ian. Shout out Ian Curry.
Here's a wild one. Another wild one. March 20th, 1934. Babe Didrikson, who also was the founder of the LPGA and was a track and field gold medalist in the Olympics. She pitched 1 inning of spring training, gave up no hits, and walked 1 as a member of the Philadelphia Athletics. She would also pitch in games for the Cardinals and the Indians. So, little interesting tidbit there. What else here? Anything else interesting? Not really, no. I mean, this is obviously kind of a slow time in baseball. Next week, we'll hit with the AL East, and that'll be fun. And this was fun as always.
Another episode of the On the Bump podcast, number 19. As always, follow us across our socials. Follow us on Instagram at On the Bump BSN. Follow us on
Join our fantasy league.
Join our fantasy league, which we talked about. Definitely message us. And go give us likes and comments on all of our stuff. Let us keep growing. Thank you, guys. We'll
stack up the views here. Come on, guys.
Yeah, stack them up. We want to see us keep putting out more content. It's the best way to do it. So we will see you next week for the 20th episode of the On the Bump podcast. See you. Have a good week.
Later.